Dance is universal. People start moving and you can just understand what they're feeling. And in Climax, you can tell they're not having a good time. Climax shouldn't work. It doesn't have a story, its characters are all one note, and you don't remember anyone's names. There's not much in the way of inter-character drama, and yet it is an experience that no one can forget. Director Gaspar Noe is a career provocateur. Irreversible is infamous as one of the most upsetting movies ever made, and yet it's masterful. It has a lot to say about masculinity and the nature of storytelling. Every single one of his movies feature depraved characters committing shocking actions, and Noe is just infatuated with the seedy underbelly of the locations these characters dwell in. The stink of a seedy BDSM bar, the filthy apartment of a Tokyo drug dealer, and the humidity of a street corner where sex workers attract clients. He adores them all. Something that I've always struggled with, even though I know he loves them, is that Noe uses these often queer people of colour to shock his audience. Their otherness is the focus, not the terrible acts of violence or the revenge. That has never sat entirely right with me. What makes Climax remarkable in Noe's filmography is that it features a diverse cast of characters who just want to dance. Their existence isn't to shock you, they would just like to express themselves, whether that be for an audience or for themselves. While practicing for an upcoming event, someone decides to spike the Sanjiro with LSD, and these otherwise normal people start to lose their minds. The first scene, this person walking through the snow, serves to disorient you. You don't even know why they're wading through the cold until an hour later. But the second scene slows down, and it introduces all of the characters to you on an old television. This is the only exposition we really need, not only because it tells us a bit about his characters, but very purposefully, Noe has placed his cinematic influences as a kind of frame around the story. You might actually be more inclined to tilt your head to figure out the references than listen to the dialogue. And if you do, you notice the novels of Franz Kafka, Oscar Wilde, and the works of Friedrich Nietzsche. It doesn't really matter that the story of the film takes place in 1994. I guess they can't just call for help, but the real world is not the entire point, it is about the experience. And as unique as that experience is, this film is actually an intertextual tapestry. The use of sound to evoke dread is so similar to Lynch's Eraserhead. The freakouts and the screaming are eerily reminiscent of Zulawski's Possession. The colour owes a huge debt to Argento's Suspiria, itself scored to perfection by the colourful band Goblin, and the deep cuts here are incredibly informative of his style. Schizophrenia from 1983, or Angst in English, is a tense home invasion movie. The surreal enters the mundane and tries to kill some folks. There are several short films that are violent, sexual, and creatively framed. It is fun to examine all of these influences, Easter eggs for the pretentious, but you don't need to know about any of them to feel the visceral fear and confusion that the characters do. Climax is shocking, not because it dives down deep into depravity, but because the characters are not in their right minds. We are forced to watch them trip off of their tits, and as it goes on, the screaming gets louder, more people get hurt, and dance evolves into body horror. Yet, the filmmaking is immaculate. It has been carefully considered. Long stretches of time are spent following characters around intense choreography, and you know if they fuck up one small thing, they have to start it again. It's remarkable, and the editing, at least when it is used, is brilliant. It cuts with motion, and it makes the dance feel so much more natural. This movie is so easy to watch, despite its horror. And if you're on board for the tone and the dancing and the screaming, then there is little else that does all of it this well. And because of that, it doesn't matter if you don't remember someone's name or motivation, because their outfit and their moves more than represent them. An eclectic soundtrack of French house and IDM booms away in the background, scoring the dance, and yet it never gets in the way. Noe could have picked some famous cuts and just played the hits, so to speak, but specifically choosing these repetitive and reverb-heavy tracks makes the movie feel hypnotic. You begin to tune out, like the characters, and you just focus on the hedonic pleasure of unrestricted movement. The filmmaking highlights all of this. The blocking becomes restrictive, often claustrophobic, as the inhibitions of the characters break down. Everyone is sweaty, gross, and too horny for comfort. The nightmare of being stuck in a room full of horny theatre kids is one I've had before, and it's delightful to see on screen. During its most depraved moments, you feel pain for these characters. You can't help them. They just have to ride it out. But some characters show an uncanny tenderness to each other. It feels genuine, it feels wholesome. Human nature is not all id and lustful gratification, Noe says. We survived so long as a species because we cared about each other. And it is these small moments of tenderness that elevate this movie for me. They express the real message of Climax. This experience is not about shocking you, but it's about observing people, admiring their good moments and wincing at their worst. Because at the end of the day, all they want to do is dance and writhe about on the floor. It is unpredictability that makes Climax feel exceptional. The filmmaking is so complicated with one takes and with a mood of organic movement that you almost don't notice how well put together everything is. And you should watch Climax, because there's nothing else quite like it. Thank you for watching.